This week I'd like to share with you the components of an informative outline. So we will cover your thesis statement, introducing your thesis and your topic, main and supporting points, transition, and your conclusion. We've talked about this last week about preparing your presentations, and the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what is the purpose for your presenting? What do you want the audience to know? For this lecture, I'm going to use fly fishing, and I don't know anything about fly fishing, so hopefully you'll understand that I'm just trying to give you an idea of how to organize a topic. And those of you who do know something about fly fishing, you can certainly correct me later if you need to. So I may say, well, the purpose of my presentation is to share my love of fly fishing. So like I asked you last week, once you have a topic, then what's important to understand is why. Why is it important that you want to share your love of fly fishing or whatever the topic may be? From there, you're probably going to be able to find your thesis, which is again the reason that you're sharing this topic. So I may answer that question with, a favorite memory of mine was fly fishing with my grandpa. As I've grown older, I have found it helped me relieve stress and build my confidence. So as I look at the reason why I want to share this topic, I can probably come up with the thesis statement. Very simple, but captures my purpose. Fly fishing is a great way to relieve stress and build one's confidence. There's a very big difference between an introduction and a thesis statement within a speech, and this is probably where students struggle the most. An introduction introduces what you're going to discuss, and it introduces different points. It just tells the audience what you're going to do. But it really doesn't talk about your opinion, your feelings, or your passion about the topic. And so it's very important to understand that you need both in order for the audience to truly understand what your purpose is and why it's important. This is an example of an introduction. Today I'm going to share with you some information about the sport of fly fishing. It is not a thesis. It doesn't tell me why it's important about, or excuse me, why you think it's important to talk about fly fishing. It only introduces the topic. A better example would be, fly fishing is a great way to relieve stress and build one's confidence. I would like to share with you some history about fly fishing, why it can help you de-stress, and some simple tips to help you enjoy this sport. You see my thesis. It's very clear as to what I want to prove or what I want to talk about. And I also understand as an audience member, there are 3 things that you will explain to me that will support how fly fishing relieves stress and builds one's confidence. A component of an informative outline are the transitions. And transitions lead the audience to your next point. And this is important. You may know the information. You may have practice and you have a very well organized speech, but the information is still new to the audience. So you have to kind of help the audience along with your information and how you present it. So you're done with one, the transition helps the audience see that you're moving on to another point. So you will have what we call an introductory transition, and this is an attention getter or a hook. And again, the first thing we have to do is get the audience's attention before we start speaking. So if you're a member of the audience, which introduction would you find more interesting or appealing? Today I'm going to share with you some information about the sport of fly fishing. Or imagine standing on the shore of a river, the morning sun reflecting off the water, a breeze in the air, and the sounds of birds calling to each other. You are alone with Mother Nature, ready for a day of fishing and relaxation. Hopefully, most of you chose the second option, that this type of introduction to the speech places the audience where you want them to be. You want to give them a visual image, and yet they still aren't quite sure what you're going to talk about, so they're even more interested because they want to know where you're going with this visual image. So there's lots of types of hooks, and we'll give some examples here in 1 second. So what's the intention of a hook or attention grabber? You definitely want to get the audience's interest. You want to also introduce them to the topic, so you start narrowing down the choices that they have. And then you also want to connect with the audience. So many hooks and attention grabbers, you can actually interact with the audience, and then they have to pay attention to you because you're expecting them to respond. So below are some examples of hooks, and again, the examples I give you are completely fictional. I just made up some numbers and some statistics so that you have an idea of how hooks work. So if I were to give a speech on fly fishing, one of my hooks could be that of a statistic. I could just tell the audience, in 2009, 120,000 fly fishing rods were sold in Idaho and Montana. In 2014, 300,000 fly rods were sold. It's just some information. Adults like statistics, but they still don't know what I'm going to talk about. I could be talking about the manufacturing of fly fishing rods. I could be talking about the sport of fly fishing. I could be talking about how much money is made from fly fishing. So they still aren't quite sure what my topic is until I give that thesis statement. So it's a good way to keep their attention. I could also turn this around and make this an interactive hook. Instead of telling them the answer, I may make it a multiple choice question and ask them what they think the answer is. So I could say, in 2009, how many fly fishing rods were sold in Idaho and Montana? 100,000, 120,000, 150,000, or 200,000? And from there, the audience would have to answer and guess what they think it would be. So now they have to be involved. They have to be paying attention because I'm actually asking a question I'm expecting an answer from. Another hook would be trivia, and you could almost turn this into a riddle. So what it is that you're just going to give some interesting facts or points, or like here, you could turn it again into an interactive question to the audience. So what sport is played outdoors with a team of one? And the audience could give you some answers, and then you could introduce your topic to fly fishing, or you could just give some interesting facts and statistics about fly fishing in a trivia format. You could give a fact as a hook. You could just state some sources, and that helps improve your credibility and also introduces the topic a little bit. According to the magazine Fishing for Life, fly fishing has increased in popularity by 35% after the release of the movie A River Runs Through It. Again, they have an idea that we're going to talk about fly fishing, but maybe I'm actually going to talk about how the movie increased the love for that sport or the interest for that sport. Or maybe I could talk about just how media can impact our choices. So we're not quite sure, again, what I'm going to talk about, but it must have something to do with fly fishing. And lastly, and my favorite, are personal stories or stories of or historical stories. This seems to really get the audience's attention. I've noticed that audience members have a lot of respect for people that are vulnerable as presenters and actually sharing their personal story with the audience. There's a high level of trust there. So audience members tend to really pay attention when someone is sharing something that's personal or meaningful to them. So this seems to be a real favorite among the students. So for example, if I want to introduce my topic with a hook with a story, I may say something like, when I was 5 years old, my grandpa took me fishing, just me and him and a beautiful day. It was one of my favorite memories, and he hooked me on the sport of fly fishing. So again, lots of ways to introduce your topic and your thesis, and usually for me, the hook comes after I have identified what it is I want to talk about and what my thesis is. Then I build a hook from there. So to kind of give a summary of your introductory part of your outline, the introduction includes some type of a hook or attention grabber, a thesis statement, and a review of 3 main points. I put optional because sometimes people would just like to begin their speech after their thesis statement, and that's perfectly fine. You need to have strong transitions, though, if you don't already tell the audience what you plan to talk about, so that they understand you're moving from one point to the next. So let's put it all together. Imagine standing on the shore of a river, the morning sun reflecting off the water, a breeze in the air, and the sounds of birds calling to each other. You are alone with Mother Nature, ready for a day of fishing and relaxation. Fly fishing is a great way to relieve stress and build one's confidence. I would like to share with you some history about fly fishing, why it can help you de-stress, and some simple tips to help you enjoy this sport. So in just a short amount of time, I've given you a hook. I use visual imagery as my hook. I've made my thesis statement a very clear and short but precise statement on why this topic is important to me. And I've told you about the 3 things that I'm going to talk about during my time up in front with my informative speech. Once you've done your introductory components of your informative outline, you then want to move to your main points. Remember, your main points support the thesis. This is very important. The audience is dependent on you, that when you say your thesis statement, you are going to back that up by using your main points as examples and justification. When they don't correlate and they're not related to each other, it's very difficult for the audience to follow what you mean. Don't assume they understand where you're going. So make those main points clear. And each main point needs to have some supporting points. So you can use facts, statistics, personal experience, or if you're giving a demonstration speech, you can just elaborate on the first step, second, and third step, because those are going to be your main points. Like we talked earlier, transitions are very important. They just help the audience with your flow of thought. They help follow. And so just think of them as a bridge, that when you've finished on one point, you need to help the audience understand you are done and you're going to move on to the next point within your speech. Very simple to do. You can say, my next point, and then we know that you're finished and you're moving on. So my example with my fly fishing, I might say, now that you have some history on fly fishing, I'd like to explain how this sport can relieve stress. So I've wrapped up my history on fly fishing, my main point 1, and now I'm going to start on my main point 2. So they can be very, very simple, but they're very necessary so the audience can follow along with you. Conclusions are also very important. It's a very strong statement, very easy to take care of, but when students leave and just kind of stop their speech, first of all, the audience sometimes doesn't know the student has completed the presentation, or it may look like the student doesn't care or is nervous because they did not have a strong ending. So work on a conclusion. Again, they don't have to be long. They're usually less than 1 minute, but it is letting the audience know that you have completed your presentation. Again, your transition to the conclusion, very simple. You may say in conclusion and complete the sentence, or even the word today and complete the sentence. So for example, with my presentation example, I may say, in conclusion, I have provided you a history on the sport of fly fishing and have explained how the sport can help relieve stress and help build self-confidence. So what I've done is I've just reiterated my 3 points in my conclusion to show that I'm confident that I feel that I covered those points very well within my speech. Do not say, that's it, I'm done, or are there any questions? It just seems to kind of deflate the whole speech. Say thank you, and maybe that's all you have to say are those 2 words. But you're done and you're concluded, and it's just a nice ending. When people end with that's it or I'm done, it just seems to weaken the presentation. You could also add on to thank you. Thank you for your time and attention, or even add a hope statement. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you will make a goal to try out this great sport. Then you're done. The audience will clap, and if there are questions, that's when they will arrive. So you don't need to ask if there's any questions. Just thank the audience, finish, and then we'll have discussion afterward. So for your assignment, you need to create an outline. And so I'm going to give you a quick overview of what the outline looks like, and I will have a template, and I'll have an outline example in the assignments column as well. First of all, you have to have an introduction. So that's one piece of your outline. And your introduction will include a hook or attention grabber. And I do want an example. I want you to say, I'm going to tell a story, or I'm going to give a statistic. but I need a little bit more information about that. I need to know that you have a statistic in mind or that you have a story in mind. So tell me what story you're going to talk about. Doesn't have to be in detail. I just need to know that you do have something in mind for your hook, not that you've chosen the type of hook. I need to know what's going to be included in that hook. I do want a full, complete sentence of a thesis statement. That needs to be very clear, and I will catch it if it's in the outline. If it's not there, I'll let you know that it's missing, and that's a very big component of your assignment, is that thesis statement. It's optional if you want to introduce your main points. You don't have to, but it really does help the audience understand what you're going to discuss. If you don't want to introduce your main points in the introduction, make sure you have very strong transitions so we can follow your flow of thought. Then for the body of the outline, again, this is not a script. I just want to know, do you have 3 main points? And if you do, what supporting points are you going to give? So what are you going to talk about with main point 1? What are a few things that you want to discuss about main point 1, 2, and 3? And I also want to see your transition statement. And again, it can be as simple as, my next point is, or now that I've covered main point 1, we're going to move on to main point 2. I just want to see that you do have a transition statement in mind to help the audience with the flow of thought and organization of your speech. And lastly, your conclusion. If you want, you can restate the purpose in the thesis, review the main points discussed, or have any other concluding remarks. So the conclusion is pretty simple part of the outline because you're just reviewing and you're thanking the audience. The assignment for this week is that I need you to create an informative speech outline. The instructions and template are located under Assignments in Blackboard under Week 4, and that is due by Sunday, September 21st at 11:59 p.m. I will have a template for you if you want to use that, and you'll just need to upload it once it's finished. Thank you.